Most religions share a belief that the body and spirit coexist, until the body has perished and the spirit moves on into the afterlife. However, there are those that remain. Some stay with a purpose. Some are doomed to relive their own violent deaths. These spirits are one of the oldest aspects associated with Halloween. For generations to come, people will still gather around the campfire to tell the stories of ghosts.
Welcome to 13 Degrees of Screams,
where we watch and dissect your favorite spooky movies.
I'm your host, Alex.
And Stephanie.
And this is a mostly horror podcast.
Each season we will rank 13 movies on a scariness scale from, you guessed it, 1 to 13.
We will uncover the real-life myths and legends that inspire these movies and tell you just how authentic they are.
This season we watch movies all about ghost. Ghost as a concept is based on the belief that a person or animal spirit exists independently from its body. In most major ancient cultures, as early as the Roman Empire AD, funeral rituals were believed to prevent ghosts from haunting the living, and it was assumed that ghosts are people that failed to make the transition from life into the afterlife. The sightings of ghosts were hardly a welcoming experience because it indicated something had gone terribly wrong, such as violent death, repressed emotions, unfinished business, etc. And it was expected of the witness of that sighting to assist the spirit in getting back to where it belonged. Some of the most famous apparitions from the U.S. include that of Abraham Lincoln, Benjamin Franklin, Marilyn Monroe, the Crying Lady, the Lady in Black, and Resurrection Mary. The historic figures typically were sighted in places that they haunted in life.
Where they lived?
Yes.
So when you're in your house, Stephanie, are you haunting your house but alive?
Yeah.
This is a live haunting.
Yeah. It's authentic.
I haunt my house, but I'm alive.
With the creepy hands. So, like Marilyn Monroe haunts, I believe, the hotel she was in when she rose to stardom. It was the Hollywood Roosevelt Hotel. Abraham Lincoln is often cited in the Lincoln bedroom that used to be his office at the time. And Benjamin Franklin, people say that they see him dancing around where his statue was.
Okay.
Yeah, and he also is spotted at the library, like a local haunt, I guess would be the right phrasing for...
A library?
Yes, it was the library at the American Philosophical Society.
Philosophical?
Yes.
So close.
Philosophical Society. Falafels. He's often at the falafel shop.
I would be so mad, like Marilyn Monroe, if the place I haunted was a hotel and not like my house.
I guess if that's like where you felt comfortable though, like if, imagine too, you're like a upcoming actor, actress. It's probably like the most exciting time of your life.
Yeah, I guess. I want, do you think ghosts pick where they haunt, or are they just kind of tied to a location and like, sorry, you're stuck here?
I've heard it both ways, because there's also, like, Anne Boleyn was mentioned as well in my research, the wife of Henry VIII and the mother of Queen Elizabeth I. And she was spotted where they executed her for treason and adultery and witchcraft and all that shit. But also she was spotted at her childhood home in, like, Kent, like a castle somewhere in Kent.
Oh, so she was all over the place.
Yeah, she just got to choose. She was a traveling girl.
It's like whenever you hear about hauntings and ghosts, it's like they're in one spot, they're stuck there.
Not in that case.
In popular culture, that's what you hear.
Yeah.
So interesting.
And with the ones that don't have a clear historical figure tied to them, like the Crying Lady, she was spotted by John Lennon from the Beatles multiple times. It's where Rosemary's Baby was filmed, and It's in the Dakota. He would often see the apparition of a crying woman, like a weeping person. And then, I guess after he died, he was spotted there himself. And I guess Yoko Ono, his wife, saw him as well.
Interesting.
And then as for the Lady in Black, she was the wife of a prisoner that tried to escape from Fort Warren on George Island. And she was executed for trying to free her husband. And he died in the escape, of course, so he was hung. And now she hangs about the fort where she was executed, haunting it, still in black robes that she wore to the gallows in 1862. This one's the worst. And Believing the Bizarre covered it, of course. If you want a whole history. Resurrection Mary was one of the most famous ghosts of Chicago as the hitchhiking ghost. She was a girl that went dancing with her boyfriend in this O. Henry ballroom in Willow Springs, Illinois. And I guess they got in an argument and she went home, or tried to, and she was hit by a unidentified driver. And her family buried her at this cemetery called Resurrection Cemetery.
Oh, that sounds lovely. Great.
So now multiple people in that area have picked up a girl in a white dress that just vanishes as soon as they pass that cemetery.
No. Don't like that.
None for me, no.
That's creepy.
Yeah. So those are just some examples of popular ghosts, the it crowd of ghosts.
The crowd, the scene.
Yes. And for types, there are several common types of ghost, one of which is the poltergeist, and it's the rarest form.
Poltergeist. From what I know about poltergeist, are they actually ghosts, though? I heard they were like energy.
Well, I do know that poltergeist, the word, is German for noisy ghost, and mostly just like loud knocking sounds and lights turning off and slamming of doors. But in most recorded cases, these things start to escalate and get more dangerous as time goes on. Sometimes people think that whoever is being affected by the poltergeist is somehow controlling it unintentionally because of the energy or whatever they're bringing to the situation, I guess.
Yeah. What I read about poltergeist before is like they just come and then they could go. It'll start, last a while, and then it could just stop.
I'm out. That was a nice vacation for me.
Which is so weird. It's such a weird thought because, when you think of hauntings and stuff, it's just they're there forever, just always haunting.
Right. And another type of ghost, the most common spotted ghost, is that of a deceased person. Usually this is like a family member or, someone you knew. And it can be friendly or not, but they also look more or less like the people they were in real life. Mm-hmm. Also, they can be recognized by like a perfume or cigar or whatever. So then you kind of get the sense of the person, even if you don't see them physically. Another type would be ectomist.
Ectomist?
Yeah, and I didn't know this was a thing. I guess paranormal investigators have seen a sort of mist or cloud, vaporous cloud, and it usually appears like several feet off the floor. And it's sort of like a precursor for when ghosts will actually appear. Sometimes it's black, white, gray, whatever. Just choose a color.
I wonder, first of all, I've only ever heard of ectoplasm, not ectomist. But makes sense.
It says ectoplasm or ectomist.
Oh, okay. So same thing. I wonder if the color of it has to do with like their aura.
Yeah, maybe. I could see that. But it's most commonly captured in photographs.
Yeah, okay. So same thing. I've never heard it called ectomist. That's so interesting. Only ectoplasm. I know about that.
I don't know. Whenever I think ectoplasm, I think of like ghost vomit, I guess.
Goopy, slimy boogers. Ghost boogers. That's what it is.
Yes. So another one that's commonly captured in pictures, and if you ever go house hunting, definitely search through those pictures for them, are orbs.
Orbs.
Yeah. If you see those little bright balls in your pictures, you just might want to swipe left on that house.
No. Is that dust or is that a dead person?
Yeah.
Who knows?
But do you want to take your chances?
No, I don't.
So it is believed that these orbs are the souls of a human or animal just kind of floating about, and they'll often like zigzag around, and sometimes they are a precursor as well for a full body apparition, but most likely in photos. And then lastly, there is funnel ghost. I've never heard of this, but I guess they're spotted in old historical buildings usually. And the funnel ghost is like a vortex frequently associated with a cold spot.
That sounds like a weather pattern.
Yeah.
Ghost tornado.
Right.
That's what it is.
Right.
Oh my God.
It usually takes on the form of a swirling funnel, and paranormal experts believe that it's like a loved one returning to visit or former resident of the home. And just like a little light wisp of light.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm gonna come back as a ghost tornado.
Yeah, I think that's the most fun.
No ghost boogers, no mist, no orbs. Tornado. That's the way I'm coming back and haunting you.
I think I'd enjoy being an orb. I'd just be like photobombing everybody.
Just floating through. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. But no, I get the ghost funnel.
Ghost funnel. Interesting.
So, anything else you'd like to discuss about the research I brought to bear?
No, I think Ghost is one of the most popular, like, horror tropes, and
Definitely.
like, everyone's seen, I don't want to say everyone, but a lot of people tend to have, like, paranormal experiences. Like, you could find one person that has, like, oh, I experienced something.
Oh, yeah, it feels like every 1 out of 2.
I know. And I mean, even I have seen things, not to go into super detail, but I've seen a ghost woman walk through my bathroom.
Not okay.
So, needless to say, I believe in something ghost-related. What about you, Steph?
I've heard knocking. I've heard mostly in my house, honestly. It might be because of my husband and now my podcast choices, but yeah, we always determine it to be more of like a fae kind of situation, though, rather than
a fairy.
Yeah, because it's more mischievous things, like things going missing and stuff falling.
It's a poltergeist.
It could be as well.
That's what it is.
I hope not, because then it's just going to get bad.
Yeah. So, Stephanie,
yes.
What was the criteria when picking these movies for this season?
Well, we discussed it had to be a movie that's solely focused on a ghost. It couldn't just be, oh, look, there's a ghost. Now let's get back to our romantic love story or something or whatever. It mainly had to be the main creature that the story was focused on, or a living person was trying to defeat or whatever.
Yeah. I think the one thing we came up with was it had to be someone who was alive, a person, and then no longer alive. And, like,
Yes.
That's what it is, not, like, a demon or something along those lines. Like, it had to be a human at some point.
It is surprising how often I searched, like, a haunting movie or whatever, and it was just like, it's mostly a demon.
It's a demon, yeah. Like, we looked at a bunch of different lists of top 10 ghost movies, and some of them were, like, iffy, like, it could go a different way.
And sometimes we had one that slipped through the cracks.
Yeah, even our first movie, we'll get to in the discussion, is questionable.
Yeah.
And despite the title,
right.
You're like, at the end, I was like, I feel like this could have gone elsewhere.
Yeah.
Which is really interesting.
I guess it could have an honorable mention somewhere else later on.
Maybe. But with that, do you want to tell everyone what our first movie was?
Yes, we did Ghostbusters.
Ghostbusters. Yes, you cannot do a ghost season without Ghostbusters.
Who are you going to call?
Ghostbusters. What are they busting?
Ghost.
Ghosts. You have to do Ghostbusters.
Yes.
In our preliminary ranking, I ranked this 6 out of 13 on our scariness scale. Where did you have it?
I had it at an 8.
So it seems like we had it middle of the pack.
Yeah. I think it's just because other stuff kind of buffered it forward.
Yeah. The one thing I found about ghost movies is I feel like this season, out of any of the other seasons, has such a wide range of movies.
Definitely.
Kid movies to I'm gonna die watching this movie kind of a thing.
Right.
I don't think many other topics will kind of have such a wide range of movies, which is so interesting because, like, ghosts and death is such a serious topic.
Yes. And like you said, it's a very wide range. Like, ghosts are always going to be somewhat creepy, but there's just such a wide range of emotions throughout all these movies that, like, there's going to be a romance, there's going to be a murder and stuff like that. It's a wide genre.
Yeah, it really is. This, like I said, by far has the most options. Like, we had to pick 13, but there's hundreds and hundreds of movies that deal with ghosts that we could do, Ghost Part 2, Part 3, Part 4 down the road. There's just so many options, and it was just really fascinating to really step back and be like, there's a lot of kid movies that fall under this, which we will cover, later in the season. But yeah, to have Ghostbusters, like, almost in the middle was really interesting.
Right. So would you like to tell us a little bit about the background of Ghostbusters?
Yes, I can. So, for those of you who don't know, Ghostbusters is a 1984 American supernatural comedy film. So this movie gears more towards the comedy side of ghosts. It stars Bill Murray as Peter Venkman, Dan Aykroyd as Ray Stantz, and Harold Ramis as Egon Spengler, who are all three eccentric parapsychologists who start a ghost-catching business in New York City. It also stars Sigourney Weaver and Rick Moranis and features Annie Potts, William Atherton, and Ernie Hudson in supporting roles. So Dan Aykroyd actually conceived Ghostbusters as a project starring himself and John Belushi, but Belushi died back in 1982, and Dan Aykroyd's concept was deemed financially impractical because the concept was more they would venture through time and space battling supernatural entities, so it wasn't just in New York City, which ended up being the main plot.
That's fascinating. I didn't know it was his idea.
Yeah, this is all like Dan Aykroyd's baby.
Oh.
But it was much more... The original concept would have been much more heavily effect-based and like a bigger adventure.
Right.
But it would have been... I mean, back in 1980s, it was, CGI was... I don't even know where CGI was. It was more like practical effects,
so like let's like scale it down from like saving the universe to just saving New York City.
Yeah, basically was the concept. So, the movie got pushed for a little bit and then came back up with, the new actors.
Right.
It was the first comedy film to employ expensive special effects, and it had, they actually had little faith in the movie.
Really?
Yeah, they didn't think it was going to do very well, but it was actually released to critical acclaim on June 8th, 1984, and it became a cultural phenomenon. So,
obviously.
Yeah, I feel like everyone has heard of Ghostbusters at some point. Like, the theme song is iconic.
Yes, and they play it throughout the movie the whole time.
Yeah, and they spawned TV shows, cartoons, toys, sequels. That one just came out a couple years ago.
The remake, yeah.
The remake. So, Ghostbusters was huge, and it was well received for having a blend of comedy, action, and horror, and the performances of all the cast was praised. It earned almost $300 million during its initial theatrical release, which made it the second highest grossing film of 1984. And then it became the highest grossing comedy ever up until that point.
Wow.
And just a fun fact, Ghostbusters was actually considered one of the first blockbusters.
Oh.
Which is especially weird for it to be considered a comedy film, too. So,
just to inform me and humor me, I guess, what kind of falls under the definition of a blockbuster, then?
Just the financial...
Oh, okay.
Gain of it, and just, like, the cultural relevance of it.
And it wasn't usually given to comedies?
No, it was really rare for a comedy film to hit that kind of success.
Okay.
But
probably like action movies, more or less?
Yeah, but honestly, again, I kind of noted that it's a good blend of all that. It's very action-packed.
Right.
It's funny, scary at times, honestly. Some of the visuals are like, ooh.
Yeah, it's obvious why it made that jump.
Yeah, so there's some background on Ghostbusters.
Okay. So the movie focuses on Columbia University parapsychologist Peter Venkman, Ray Stantz, and Egon Spengler. And in the very beginning, they get a call about a sighting at the New York Public Library of a ghost. And the ghost is just your calm, ordinary lady librarian, just floating about, doing her work.
She's a lady. Although I do want to say, speaking of ectomist and plasm, there was goopy all over the library cards.
She was not cleaning up after herself.
No, she done sneezed on everything, gooped up the place. Yeah. And then she has the nerve to shush them.
Right.
Excuse me, lady.
Yes, and they try to get a reaction out of her, I guess. They approach her with their little paranormal gun
I
thing.
think it just detects it. Like, it's just detecting.
Okay, so she shushes them and tries to go about her day, I guess. But mainly Peter, I think, upsets her, and she reveals herself to be quite the not librarian lady.
No, they count to 3, and they're like, blah! And then she, like, morphs into this crazy-looking...
witchy creature,
gross thing, and then they run out screaming. Because
yes.
I definitely would, too. First of all, I would have walked away just seeing a woman, let alone this grotesque creature with scary face. I don't know.
Right. And I guess they're just trying to record the sighting just for proof.
They're basically just trying to show existence of ghosts.
Yes, because the university dean dismisses their research and fires them right after because he thinks it's stupid.
I've been like, go to the library right now. He's still down there.
Right.
I could show you with a slide. Like, that made no sense.
Yes, because there's so much physical evidence.
Yeah.
Even without her being there. There's still, like, how do you explain all this, like, goop just sitting about?
I would love to hear them try to explain what that could be.
Yes.
It could go many ways, and I don't want to hear any of it.
So, without funding, they're forced to go and set up shop in a refurbished old firehouse where they open a paranormal investigation and elimination service. Called Ghostbusters!
Something like that. Who's gonna call?
Ghostbusters! So, at first it's kind of slow. They do have one notable paranormal encounter in the apartment of cellist
Dana Barrett, who is Sigourney Weaver.
Yes. She calls Ghostbusters, but it looks like Peter Venkman is more after a date than actually investigating her apartment.
Yeah, he's the one who takes the call. It's just him.
Yeah.
And you want to tell everyone what Dana experienced?
Dana experienced, like, the mouth of hell opening up in her refrigerator, and it's like, zoo.
Yeah, it was like this pyramid temple thing with demonic dogs, and the one utters the word Zool.
Yes. Peter Venkman's not concerned about that at all.
No.
And doesn't go to the fridge that she tells him that she sees it in. Just noses about her apartment, trying to get her to go on a date with him.
Yeah, he, like, dismisses her. Not, like, dismisses her, but is not taking any of this seriously. Eggs fry on her.
Yeah, clearly stuff is going on. Right. It's not just a hysterical woman.
No. And he's dismissing it purely because he's trying to get a date out of this. I'm like, bro.
He is also, I would say, the least interested Ghostbuster. He seems like he's already so over it.
Yeah, definitely. Like, Dan Aykroyd's character, Ray, he's very, very into it. Egon. And Peter just seems like the tag-along.
Yeah. Sort of like you do like a group project with a bunch of friends, and your one friend is just kind of there to be the warm body.
Yeah. That's Peter Venkman.
But he's supposed to have, like, probably the most prowess when it comes to information about this.
Yeah, no. So he's just very, like, blasé about the whole situation.
Right. So basically, with the whole Dana and Peter thing, they just kind of leave it at that. There's like an investigation, but doesn't really turn up anything. He still wants the date. She's like, nah, I still want you to handle the ghost issue or whatever is going on in my fridge. And they're just like, let's talk about this later. So they go to a hotel that has this gluttonous ghost called Slimer at the Sedgwick Hotel, causing chaos. So they haven't tested out their equipment properly because they have little jumpsuits and guns and stuff with that shoot rays at things.
Yeah, science stuff.
Yes, science. And Egon does specifically warn the group that crossing their energy streams of the proton pack weapons could cause like a catastrophic explosion, like goodbye New York kind of explosion. But they do manage to capture the ghost after completely wrecking this hotel, and it's captured in this ecto-containment unit that they're keeping under the firehouse.
I want to talk about Slimer really quick because it's like this green blob with arms and a distorted, grotesque, huge mouth. And I'm like, what did you look like as a human? Like, what made you turn into this?
I have a similar theory about another movie we're going to watch that it almost seems like you lose your identity as a ghost, like the longer you're dead. And then you just kind of go, like, devolve into your, like, most basic form, and you're just kind of, like, cartoonish after a while.
Yeah, like more of a... I don't want to say... Slimer wasn't necessarily, like, a cartoonish version or, like, what you typically think of a ghost, because it's not, but it's, you know, when you...
It doesn't have, like, a human characteristic, though.
Yeah, like a cartoon ghost, you think of just the white sheet or whatever the case may be. He's more towards that spectrum than a human. He looks nothing like a human.
Right. Probably about the size of a large cat, like, just kind of floating about, like a big blob.
I thought that was very interesting, just the difference between the librarian being, like, wholly human, minus the transformation part. Right. And then Slimer, who's just a straight up green glob.
They have like a big variety of ghost types in the movie. But after they successfully capture this ghost, it seems like supernatural activity rises in the city and they become more popular and they're getting calls left and right to the point where they have to hire on another person, the fourth member, and they hire Winston Zedmore. And because they're not sleeping, like they're getting so many calls and their secretary is pissed at them all the time for taking their calls.
She has to do her job.
Yeah, obviously. Also, there's like a little side quest with the Environmental Protection Agency. They're suspicious of the Ghostbusters and want them to disband. They don't like that they've captured these ghosts or whatever, so they just release them.
Yeah, for what it's worth, I kind of understand the concern here. Like, none of this stuff, the Ghostbusters barely tested it. So, like, no one knows what the ramifications of this, because they store these ghosts in, like, the chamber thing. Who knows what could happen?
Right.
Just filling up this I don't know, vat. They don't really show it. They just shove it in the wall kind of a thing.
Yeah.
From the capture device.
Yeah, you don't really see what's going on underground or wherever their containment unit is. We don't see, like, the cells or whatever they're contained in. And to be fair, they are at, like, max capacity already when this guy comes about.
Right, just because of how much paranormal activity has been happening.
Right. So I guess these inspectors are more or less just wanting to check out their equipment and do some research on it, but it ends up blowing up in their face and they just release them.
Yeah, they shut it down.
Yeah.
And that releases all the ghosts
that they had already caught.
Right.
So that's going on. So it's just a mess out there. But Peter, again, meets with Dana and informs her of what they found on Zool. And according to their research, they found that he was a demigod worshipped as a servant to Gozer the Gozerian, a shape-shifting god of destruction. And upon returning home, she's just chilling. And then all of a sudden, her kitchen door, it's like one of those old-fashioned like swinging doors or something. You just see it light up. And all of a sudden, this demon dog is in the doorway and just possesses her.
Yeah, so she's in like a chair. And all these, like, hands start ripping out of the chair. And they're, like, dark, clawed, demon-looking hands. And the chair gets dragged through the doorway. I didn't want to mention the reason this is happening to Dana specifically. Mm-hmm. It's because of the way the building was built. There was a Gozer worshipping cult that built this house. The leader built the house. And the way the metal or something was built, it became this, like, hub to basically summon Gozer.
Yeah. And her apartment's just like right at the center of it.
Right. So that's why this is happening to Dana, because in the beginning of the movie it just seems really random this is happening to her, but then you find out, oh no, this building was built literally by a cult of Gozer.
Yes.
And it's built perfectly to summon this god.
Right. So now she is claiming to be the gatekeeper, and when Peter shows back up, she's like, "Are you the key master?" And he's like, "I'll be whatever you want me to be."
Yeah. I mean...
But he can clearly tell she's possessed, and he's just like, "Sure."
Yeah, she's like floating on the bed, turning. She's like, "There is no Dana, only Zool." He's like, yes. "Can I have my girlfriend back?" And like, apparently they're dating now at this point.
He's a little too flamboyant with that. Like, just like, yeah, she's my girlfriend, sort of.
Yeah. And then it's important to mention Dana's neighbor.
Yes.
Because he's a little nerdy guy played by Rick Moranis. There's the other demon dog named Vince Clortho, which is such a strange... I thought they said Vince for the
longest
longest
time. I thought so, too. I thought it was Vince, and I was like, that's such a... Why does he get to be Vince?
No, it's Vince, V-I-N-Z. Nerdy guy. The other demon dog possesses him, and he's the key master.
Yes.
So the two of them need to meet up to actually unleash Gozer, basically.
Well, they need to connect physically. She is looking for...
She's looking for his key.
Anybody. You know, so I guess, though, Egon and Ray kind of try to keep them apart for a while, but Peter's like, no, we should have these two meet up. Like, yeah. It'll be so fun.
No, that's
not a good idea, Peter. But they are copulating, I guess, while the investigator returns with law enforcement and has the Ghostbusters arrested. And it's so funny to watch them, like, in holding with all the other prisoners, because they're trying to plan around how to help the city and what's going on with this whole Gozer thing. Mm-hmm. So they have like a blueprint of Dana's building laying out, but the other inmates are like gathering around like, yeah. We should do that. Like,
yeah, no, not you guys, us.
Right. But ultimately,
they convince the mayor to let them go.
Right. The mayor brings in a priest, I guess he's really fond of, or his priest. And they basically convince him on the fact that if you give us one day to do it and we succeed, you'll definitely get reelected. Yeah. If not, we'll just go back to prison. It's nothing off your nose. Like,
yeah. But basically, they're like, yeah, if you let us do this, you become the hero.
Right.
You will be reelected. I'm like, manipulation.
So, with permission from the mayor, they call in, like, the National Guard, police. They have, like, a police escort to Dana's building.
And there's, like, people crowded around here, like, cheering them on. I'm like, people, go home. You're facing the apocalypse, potentially.
Right.
Which is crazy. Like, we go from, like, just ghost sightings to now we're trying to defeat a god.
Yes.
Which... how we got here.
It is really 0 to 100 in 5 seconds.
Yes.
Because it's no longer ghost. It's just demons, really. Just a demon that's causing more ghosts to come because of the, supernatural forces.
Mm.
So they travel to her apartment, and Dana Zool and Louis Vins have opened the gate between the dimensions and transform back into these demonic dogs, though.
Yeah, so they're like at the top of the building now.
Yes.
And
it's like at the roof.
Yeah, it's like this giant door almost looking thing opens, and then you see the pyramid building that Dana saw in her fridge.
Right, and it's like this large staircase, and this woman that...
It's supposed to be androgynous, like sexless individual. Does look more female, but it doesn't really matter because it's a shape-shifting. It could be anything it wants to be.
Right. So the Ghostbusters arrive just as Gozer is appearing, and they try to attack her with their beams, and like don't cross the streams and all that stuff. But she disappears, and you can kind of hear her disembodied voice, like, choose the form of the destructor.
Yeah. So basically, the way Gozer works is it comes to whatever realm that it wants to, and basically the citizens pick its form to destroy them.
That's so weird to me.
It's so weird. It's kind of like, yeah, you get to pick, but I'm still going to kill you, kind of a thing.
Right.
So the Ghostbusters like, okay, clear your mind.
Don't think of anything, don't.
And then Gozer's like, the form has been chosen, and everyone's like, wait a minute, you didn't think of anything, did you?
And Ray's like, oh yeah, I did.
Oh yeah, I thought of something. And he thought of the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man.
In defense, he's like, I just thought of something pure.
Yeah, honestly, I don't think there's ever been a time in my whole life where my mind has not been thinking of a thought.
Right.
So, like,
it would be impossible to empty my head, at that time.
What are they supposed to do? Just not think of anything for whatever? And
I almost wondered if it wasn't going to be them. Like, would it just be one of the citizens down below? Like, they could have imagined something way worse than the Marshmallow Man.
Right. So, I don't know. But, yeah, Ray screwed up real bad.
Yeah, so she takes the form of this gigantic Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, and, like, Godzilla just starts destroying buildings. And
yeah, he's huge.
Yes.
And if you've never seen the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, very similar to the Pillsbury Doughboy.
Right.
He's a big, puffy, he's made of marshmallow.
Yes.
He's very cuddly looking until he looks unhappy.
Yes.
But he is very cute.
Right.
It's a very iconic scene of this giant marshmallow dude walking down.
Right. If you haven't seen the movie, just look up the images.
Right. Again, this is a ghost movie we're talking about.
Right.
Now we're battling a giant
demon god thing.
Kaiju-sized Stay Puft Marshmallow dude.
Right. Where are we? How did we get here?
Yeah.
So Egon then says, like, forget what I said earlier about crossing the streams with the proton energy. Let's just do that and see what happens. So they kind of say their goodbyes. They think they're going to die.
Yeah, so, because the Stay Puft Man at this point is, like, clawing at the building they're at. So basically, if they cross the streams, there's going to be an explosion. So
right.
That's their thought in what happens when you set marshmallow on fire. What happened?
S'mores, I don't know.
Stephanie has never seen a s'more before, never tasted a s'more before. She has no idea what happens when you roast a marshmallow. It melts. Spoiler, the Stay Puft Man melts. They cross the stream.
Well,
explosion.
I don't know. When you said melts, I didn't see him as melts. I just thought of it like he explodes, and then there's just like goopy marshmallow everywhere.
Yeah, because he melted.
So I guess that's true. He wasn't s'mores, unfortunately.
So he melts, and somehow the Ghostbusters survived this ordeal. They're fine.
Turns out it was what they needed all along.
Yeah, and it wasn't like, it was a big explosion, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't like ending the city explosion. It was
right.
just like at the top of the building.
Yes. And it also encased Dana and Louis, is that his name?
Yeah, so basically, the demon dog things, we didn't mention this before, but they were statues on top of the building, and they, like, broke out of the statue. Now they're statue again. They're, like, hardened.
Right, so they think they're, like, gone forever because they're solid.
Yeah, but no, because it starts breaking apart, and Dana and Louis are inside.
Yes.
So they're fine. So they went from statue to dog to Dana / Louis to dog
to statue
to Dana and Louis again.
It's the circle of life.
So, I don't know. That's what happened. Very strange.
So they pull them out of the wreckage of these statues and they walk down on the streets and everyone is celebrating them, and Dana and Peter kiss. And she looks only half interested in it.
Well, there's globs of marshmallow in her hair. She's dirty. That's the last thing anyone want to be doing.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I was just transformed into a demonic dog after being possessed by this thing.
I just had sex with my creepy neighbor. Like
no. I'm good. But no. Because we know Peter, all he wants is that little kissy kiss.
Right.
Read the room, dude.
Yeah, but they are celebrated as heroes, and then they play out the theme. It's great. In the neighborhood.
Who you gonna call?
Ghostbusters!
So, Stephanie, had you seen Ghostbusters prior to us watching it for the podcast?
Oh, it's been many years, but yes, essentially.
I've seen this movie so many times. It's actually my sister's one of her favorite movies. So I've seen it a lot, but not in recent years, and much more when I was a kid. And I don't know. I liked it, don't get me wrong, but I remember the ending being way more adventurous, I guess you could say. Like, it kind of just, like, Stay Puft shows up, and then they blow it up.
Right.
I remember more going on.
I guess maybe with all the ghosts being released, I could see that, because they are kind of wrecking the town, like, alongside when Gozer shows up.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I kind of agree, though. Honestly, too, I remember it as a kid without streaming. Like, I would always watch it on cable, so I always saw it kind of in bits and pieces. I did see the whole thing, but always, like, one part and then another part. And I always thought of it as kind of disjointed from how the jumps they make from investigating a haunting at a library to the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man.
Very wild.
Yeah.
Do you like the movie?
I do. It was fun.
Mm-hmm.
How about you?
I like it, yeah. It's not like one of my favorites personally, but I have such nostalgia for it that I like it.
Right. Peter kind of gives me the ick most of the time, though. Like, he's just kind of cringy.
Yeah, I think especially nowadays, that character is probably would be more criticized than it was, back.
I know everyone loves Bill Murray, though.
Right. Back in the 80s, he's like, oh, yeah, he's creepy. He's like, But I feel like back then it was more accepted.
He's more of a character.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, he's just being pushy and whatever. But it's Bill Murray.
Right.
Like, come on.
He's still charming, obviously.
Yeah, for sure. But just like a little pushy.
Yeah, a little too much. So let's talk about some of the sightings that sporadically happened through the movie that we ended up not really focusing on in the plot. So it looks like most ghosts in the movie have the ability to move objects and leave behind a gooey residue.
Mm-hmm.
And typically they float and have a faded, kind of iridescent look.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like with the woman at the beginning, she looked just like a woman, but she was floating and you could see through her. And then, we talked about Slimer, he was, solid for the most part, it seemed.
I thought he was kind of like a greenish, though, like iridescent. I'm misremembering.
Yeah, well, regardless, very different. And then, when all the ghosts were being released, we saw the one ghost taxi, and he was like a skeletal, decaying-looking dude.
Yeah, I was like, that's just a zombie. That's not a ghost.
Mm-hmm.
There was also, like, a little spark of a ghost that flew up into a taxi, and maybe it was the same thing.
One, yeah. So when they're being released, they were flying, it just
I guess little
effects.
Orbs, I guess would be the word.
Yeah, and then they were manifesting in places, and then Ray had a dream he was having relations with a ghost lady.
Yeah,
and she just looked like a woman too.
Right.
So it's just this movie. Any kind of ghost you could think of probably exists in this universe.
Yes, obviously. It seemed like most could resemble a normal person if they chose, but also looked monstrous in form when they were threatened or, whenever attacked. Definitely different levels. And I guess since Zool is on the loose, the paranormal energy is strong amongst the city.
Yeah, that's why everything was ramping up, is because the coming of Gozer.
Right. They thought they were just increasing in popularity, but it's also just the fact that there's so many.
Yeah. I did want to real quick go into the lore of Gozer because I kind of alluded to before when we were thinking about our criteria where it had to be a human that died if that was the main enemy. Arguably, this may have not fallen under the ghost category because Gozer's a god.
Yeah.
It's called Ghostbusters, but the main antagonist
should be Godbuster.
Yeah. So it's very weird. So Gozer travels to different dimensions. So in this universe, there's different worlds. In one of the scenes, Lewis, who is possessed by Vince, goes on and on about the forms Gozer took in other dimensions.
Oh.
Did you miss that part?
I noticed he was, like, when they had him captured there in their little office for a while, he was just kind of rambling to himself, and
yeah, so
I didn't really focus on it because I thought it was just incoherent babbling.
No, so he was going through all the different forms Gozer took.
Oh, really?
In different worlds. So in the one scene Lewis is going on, he says, during the rectification of the Valdrani, Gozer came as a large and moving torb. A torb?
What's a torb?
Okay, this is what a torb is. I did some research. It is likely that a torb is some kind of otherworldly inanimate object or some kind of blasphemous mammoth beast. So that's what Gozer took the form of there. Then, during the third reconciliation of the last of the Mechatrix supplicants, they chose the form of a giant slore. And a slore are rather large reptilian beasts not from this world. So you get some of the lore in just that one line that Gozer goes on and...
Maybe that's why I thought of it as incoherent babbling, because you don't really just off the top of your head know what a slore is.
Right. For all intents and purposes, it is incoherent babbling, but... Lewis is going into
the history, yeah.
Those are the last two things that Gozer took the form of.
Oh.
And inscribed on the temple walls of the Gozerian temple, there are predicted years of when Gozer returned. So we have 1381, 1432, 1501, 1596, all the way to 1984. And then the most recent one was in 2021. So, and then the one after that will be 2134.
Well, damn.
So, like, Gozer comes at very specific dates. So.
Weird.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting.
Yeah.
Gozer was noted as the absolute ruler of the sixth dimension. Whatever that is. Gozer is the ruler of that.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So there we go.
But loves to visit every, how many years? 12 years or whatever?
I don't know. I did have an interesting fact about the Enfield haunting case.
Oh, okay.
In that case, a medium named Annie Shaw was brought to investigate. While in a trance, she moaned, "Gozer, Gozer, help me, LV, come here." So Gozer was a thing in that case. Not the Gozer of Ghostbusters, but I think Dan Aykroyd took inspiration from
that case.
But who's the real Gozer then?
Right. Ooh.
Creepy.
Yeah.
Right. So, just an interesting little fact.
So how do you think it ranked now that you've watched it again?
Well, we have nothing to rank it against currently, so I'm going to keep it where it is right now. I don't think it's a particularly scary movie. There's some scary imagery with the librarian transforming. The demon dogs could be kind of creepy.
I remember thinking the dogs were a little creepy as a kid.
Yeah, so I think it's PG-13, I believe. So I think that's a good age range. Like, I want to let your little kid watch it. But it's also funny. So I think it's a good mix.
Yeah, I agree. I'm pretty comfortable with how I rated it before, with nothing to compare it to.
Right. We'll have to see how this ranks against our next week's movie. So you have to tune in to see how it stacks up.
Yes.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the show and listened to it on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please give us a 5-star rating because that is super helpful.
And you can find us on social media using 13 Degrees of Scream.
This has been 13 Degrees of Screams, and we will see you next creep.
It's a pun on week.